Hi guys, Brain here, and welcome to another commentary video. Today we're going to be talking about 3gens because it's something of a heated conversation that's been brought up among the DBD community in the past 6 months or so. Kind of started coming around into popularity around during the Knight chapter because Knight, obviously with his power, despite his shortcomings and other aspects of his kit, is very, very good at holding 3gens. And obviously with the new advent of the drop of Skill Merchant, Skull Merchant, her dropping, she is also very, very good at holding 3gens as well. So we've had two back-to-back killers that, despite having not too strong of a kit outside of this ability, they are very, very good at holding 3gens. So people have been kind of talking about this on DBD Twitter, on YouTube, and Twitch streams of like the concept of 3gens, and kind of been very, very heated and frustrated each other about it. And I think that a lot of the heat and frustration comes from a lack of understanding of what a 3gen is, because some seem to point to blame at the wrong person, whereas other people kind of think it's just a natural thing. And we're going to break that down today and see where there's kind of truth in both arguments, which is why people are so angry, and kind of try to, settle things the best we can. So let's go ahead and get started. So what is a 3gen? 3gen is when three generators are close to each other. Wow, that's such a crazy definition, but that's essentially all it comes down to, is that three generators are really, really close together, making them super easy to defend by the killer. Because obviously if you aren't somebody like Blight or Nurse, you don't have a lot of map mobility, it's going to be hard for you to pressure gens that are cross map. But if the three gens are right next to each other, obviously super easy for you to patrol back and forth and keep these gens from getting completed. The concept itself is actually pretty easy to understand, but how we get into this situation is what is difficult. How we get here is something that the DBD community can't seem to agree on, and I want to break that down. So first, some 3gens on most maps are caused by kind of a lapse in survivor judgment, or a bad random, or something to that extent. Essentially, most 3gen situations happen when you get down to 2 generators left on the map that you need to complete in order to get out, and you have essentially 4 generators to pick from, and there'll be 3 of them that are super close together on one side of the map, and then one off somewhere in a corner that's super safe. And the random or your bad team decides that they're going to go and do the safe gen to try, because obviously it's easier to do the gen where the killer's not. So they go and they do the safe gen, but once they pop that safe gen, you are down to 3 generators that you have to pick from, and they all happen to be in this one tucked nice and neat corner on one side of the map, making the killer's job to patrol and protect the gens super easy. So you end up in this gridlock of just taking forever and ever to get the gens done, because anytime you try to get the gens done, the killer can quite easily, show up and stop you. And this gets especially worse if they're running like the meta slowdown, like Overcharge, Call of Brine, even Pain Res. If they have a Scourge Trick over there, they can just kind of recycle the Pain Res over and over and over and over. It can get really bad really quickly. Jolt is one of those perks that usually it's kind of like a run-of-the-mill. It's kind of like a solid A perk. It doesn't really win games for you, but it is nice to have. But in a 3gen, it becomes extremely devastating, because obviously, you're going to be in the range to be knocking down people all the time and getting those gens multiple times regressed. It's a mess. It's a mess, right? And there's nobody to really blame in that situation besides the person that ran to the other side of the map and did the only safe remaining gen. The smart play here would have been to do one of the gens that are really, really close to each other. That way you can split them up. Because if you split them up, you do one of the gens that are tucked in the one corner on one side of the map, then you have 2 gens in one corner of the map and 1 gen on the other side. So unless there's somebody like I mentioned earlier, like Nurse, like Blight, that can actually get there super quickly, you're going to have a hard time being able to patrol that gen that's off on the other side of the map. And even if you do decide to go all the way over there to that back corner of the map, the 2 gens that are in that corner, they're going to be able to do safely. You can't defend both at the same time, even with characters like Twins, who there literally be multiple of you. So yeah, that is a bad play on the survivor's part. However, this does not take into account natural 3gens, because that is a thing. Let's take a look at a map like Haddonfield. Now, the reason that Haddonfield is the most problematic, or at least from the survivor standpoint, is that it consistently spawns a 3gen, a natural 3gen. So what is a natural 3gen? So previously we talked about that 3gens can be caused by people coming down to the last, 2 or 1 gens, and then they accidentally do the safest one and leave 3 on one side, right? We just talked about that. However, on Haddonfield, there will always be a static gen spawn of the one on the porch outside the Myers house itself, one inside the living room of the Myers house, and also one on that side somewhere. It'll sometimes be the top left or to the top right on either side of the Myers house. There's always a 3gen on this map. It's not created by survivor mistake, it just kind of always exists. There are always 3 gens super close to each other. Now, the smartest thing to do here is to try and, get one of these gens done super early in the match so you can start working on cracking that 3-gen as soon as possible. However, if the killer is aware of this, and especially so if they're playing somebody like Knight or Skull Merchant who excel at holding an area, that's going to be incredibly difficult. And they can probably, especially if they have the right perks, enforce that 3-gen very, very early into the match. Even if the survivors, decide, like, okay, well, she has 3 drones over the Myers house 3-gen. She has 3 drones over there. We're just not going to go touch it. We're just going to do the other gens around the map. It's going to get down to a point where you get down to 2 gens, or to 2 or 1 gens, and those are the only gens that are left. And then you have to be stuck in this situation. And this is often what killers do. Often killers will, predestinately pick a 3-gen, and especially if they're playing like somebody like Knight or Skull Merchant, go defend it at like 4 or 5 gens super early in the match, prevent people from doing it, and willingly lose the safer gens around the map just to protect that 3-gen area. Now, obviously, this, like I said, I mentioned briefly, this is not a fault of the survivors. This is just a fault of map design. There is nothing they could really do to avoid a 3-gen situation. Typically, a 3-gen situation is amounted to a survivor mistake, and it is up to the killer's, macro map knowledge and their skill as a player to enforce a 3-gen situation as a very, very powerful tool for them to catch up against the team. However, if the gens just spawn naturally into 3-gen, you're essentially down and being punished for something that you didn't really do or cause, which is really, really, really frustrating. It's one of the things that often killers find frustrating about maps like Fractured Cowshed or Batum, where it just kind of naturally spawns with really strong setups, and you feel like you're being punished for something you didn't really do, which feels bad. So this is kind of like the survivor end of that, where it's like, if you just have naturally just spawning 3-gens, it just feels bad because you're being punished for something you can't really help, which it just doesn't feel good. And this forgoes the fact that there can even be things such as 4 and 5 gens. Yes, that is a thing. What do I mean by 4 and 5 gens? Haddonfield specifically, once again, I told you we'll be talking about a lot about Haddonfield here. Haddonfield specifically does this a lot, which is very, very frustrating. So I talked about there's a gen that consistently spawns in Myers house, outside on the porch of Myers house, and then to the left or the right of the Myers house itself, whether that be to the top left or to the right. Usually there's a gen that spawns there. However, there can be 4 or 5 gens because sometimes maps only spawn 1 or 2 gens on the other side of the map, and they're all nuzzled on that one side. Myers house does this. The Myers map, Haddonfield, does this a lot. Haddonfield has the capability to do this, and I've run into it multiple times, where there'll be the gen on the porch, gen inside Myers house, a gen to the top left corner behind one of the 2-story houses. There'll be a gen over in the little park picnic area, whatever you want to call that, the playground, and then there'll be a gen in the street closest to the Myers house. So all of those gens are essentially on one side of the map, and there's only 2 on the other side. That'll probably be in House of Pain or another 2-story house. But there's only 2 gens on one side of the map, and the other 5 are just like chilling right next to each other. And it makes luckily, when I've run into these situations, I've not run into somebody like Knight or Skull Merchant while playing in these scenarios, thank goodness. But it can get even worse than that. Another great example of this is the Sanctum of Wrath. Sanctum of Wrath does this sometimes, where the middle area, the choke point, is the actual sanctum itself, the temple. One side will often spawn 4 gens on one side and then only 2 on the other. So what the killer can do is just kind of let go one side of the map with the 2 generators and hold down the side that has 4 gens. So yeah, it can get even worse than that, worse than just a natural 3-gen. There can be even worse situations with that. So this is why people are arguing about it and can't seem to agree, because are 3-gens caused by survivors? Yes, sometimes they are, and you should definitely, as a killer main, definitely punish that situation if they're just deciding to just slam the gems as fast as possible and not really paying attention to where they're leaving the gens, and then they lock themselves into a 3-gen. You should definitely utilize that as a catch-up tool and punish them. However, to assume that every single 3-gen is caused inherently by survivor error is just simply not true, because maps like what we talked about, Haddonfield, Sanctum of Wrath, Dead Dog is another great example. Dead Dog, the Gallows gen, and there's sometimes 2 gens back there in the weeds and the field and the shrubs back behind the Gallows. Yeah, 1000%. The plenty of maps naturally spawn 3-gens, and if you're playing a killer, it's better with Knight and Skull Merchant, as you found out, which is why everybody's frustrated. But even if you run just a moderately good character like Wesker, and you run a lot of slowdown perks, you can just hold that area super easily. You don't even need to run specifically a 3-gen holding like base kit killer. You could just run a lot of slowdown and a moderately good killer and hold those areas as well. And that's just naturally there for you. That close gen situation was not created by survivor error. It would spawn into the map that way. So essentially, if I'm trying to look for a TLDR, do survivors sometimes cause this situation, and you should definitely punish that? Yeah, that is true. But you know what's also true is that maps also naturally spawn these situations, and sometimes killers are just taking advantage of a bad map spawn. So it's not inherently true that it's a survivor error as well. So yeah, hopefully that helps you understand the 3-gen situation a little bit more. I've seen a lot of like discourse over this and lack of people's ability to agree about it. So I wanted to kind of like just break it down a little bit and explain, because like usually when you have two sides that are arguing so intensely about a subject or a situation, it's usually because there's a little bit of truth to both sides. And in this case, I definitely see that where, you know, both sides have a point, but they seem to think that their point is the only right one, which is, you know, that's just a DBD community thing. We're very unempathetic at certain points. So yeah, that's why. So hopefully that helped clear things up. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys. That's it for today's video. I appreciate you so much, but I do upload daily, so I will see you in tomorrow's zone. But if I do not, I will see you when I see you. Goodbye.